give them that.
Peace, love, and lights. Peace, love, and lights. Peace, love, and lights. Peace, love, and lights. We gonna bless the trap with this peace, love, and lights. We gonna bless our people with this peace, love, and lights. Yes, change your life. Open your eyes. Do it fast. Don't be surprised. What this world is going through right now is getting evil. Gotta come together so we can fly like an eagle. Killing the snakes, let go of this fake system. Love is the key, stop living your life as the victim. Been blessed with everything that we need, take action, sick 'em. If you want peace, put down your peace, that's how we fix 'em. We in the book, not leaning on our own understanding. We getting hot, can't cool us down, no need for fanning. Been getting stepped on so long, we feeling like shoe soles. But as long as I got the body, I roll with true souls. Ain't nothing sweet, no need to check your glucose. When two or more come together, we see the loophole. Time to rise and stick together like two doves. I follow Christ, if you hating, then who do you trust?
All right. Shabbat Shalom, family. It's your boy Solemn Prophet here with Professor S, as y'all already know. And this is Shabbat Talk. Let me go ahead and get my brother on up here on the screen, man. Go ahead and tell the family what we doing. What we doing?
Yeah, Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
What it do?
What it is? So today we will be talking about, and I had no pre-knowledge of this. So Solemn Prophet decided to do a study on concubines. So that's what we're going to be discussing.
Concubine right on time. And not only concubines.
Oh, and mistresses.
Yes.
Nope.
Yes. What is a concubine and what is a mistress according to the Bible? Yes.
Because we get this all misconstrued, and people tend to have their own preconceptions of what this really is, and we need to see what Scripture says it is, because Scripture is our ultimate source of truth, right? And regardless of what I feel or someone else feels, we need to go to the source of truth to see what the truth actually is.
Absolutely. And you already know, first off, we got to give all honor, esteem, worship, and praise to the Most High for not only his message and his word, right, but to be able to come together in his name and fellowship, everybody, getting knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, iron sharpening iron, and all of that goodness. Thanking him for waking us up today and to be able to share this with everybody. So all praises to the Most High. Just want to give a shout outs, man. Shout out to everybody on the panel. Sister Marquita, Sister Tess, Sister Cindy, Sister Andrea, Brother Sims, and it was Sister Kaylee, right? Kaylee?
That's it.
Sister Kaya, Princess, Queen B. Yeah. Shabbat Shalom, everybody.
Yeah,
welcome. Okay, so first off, we're gonna get right into it. We're gonna discuss the Torah portion. While we actually, in the meantime, want to say Shabbat Shalom to Sister Jasmine. Sister Jasmine is in the building.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
My favorite cousin. Don't tell nobody. Shabbat Shalom. Yeah. So for everybody who's new to the new format, we're gonna do Torah portions at the beginning of each of our shows, and over the course of a year, we would have covered the entire Torah, not including any of the additional topics that we cover on a weekly basis. So this week's Torah portion was Genesis chapter 1, verse 1 through Genesis chapter 6 and verse 8. And then there was also the prophets. This week was Isaiah 42 and 5 through Isaiah 43 and 11. And then there was a excerpt connection to the New Testament, which was John chapter 1 verse 1 through all the way through John chapter 1 verse 14.
Shalom and welcome to Parsha in 60 Seconds. Today's portion is from Genesis 1:1 through 6:8. It is called Bereshit, which means in the beginning. In the beginning, God created everything in 6 days. God separated light from darkness, separated the water, creating sky, divided land and sea, causing vegetation to sprout from the land, set up sun, moon, and stars, created aquatic creatures, created land creatures, and made man in God's image, male and female, putting man in charge, blessing him, and declaring all creation very good. Then God rested. God created man, named him Adam, created the Garden of Eden, included the tree of knowledge of good and evil, warning that if eaten from, death would occur. It was not good for man to be alone, and one rib later, Eve was created. Satan, in the form of a serpent, tricked Eve into eating the forbidden fruit. She gave some to Adam. God cursed Eve with childbearing pains and Adam with manual labor. God made some designer animal skin clothes and then kicked them out of Eden. Cain and Abel were born. They brought offerings to God. God accepted Abel's lamb, but not Cain's fruit. Cain pwned Abel out of jealousy. God cursed and exiled Cain. 5 generations later, Lamech, spawn of Cain, became the first polygamist and murdered a young man just because he gave him a bruise. Sons of God started getting frisky with the human females, and they gave birth to superhumans called Nephilim. Several generations later, the world is full of wickedness. God expressed an intention to destroy all life from the earth, but Noah found God's favor, and that is Bereshit in 60 seconds.
They condensed that pretty well. That's a lot of information to condense into such a small segment of time.
Yeah, that was a whole lot. A whole lot.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, I'll start asking around what you guys got from your various Torah portion readings. We'll start just with the Genesis part, and then we can go to the prophets, and then from the prophets we can go over to the New Testament and John chapter 1. Anybody want to share? Okay, Sister Tess, go ahead, kick us off.
Shalom. I don't remember which apocrypha book it was in that I read. There's more to the story of Lamech why he killed 2 people, but of course, there wasn't time in that Torah portion. But I kind of got a better understanding of that part of the Torah portion, because of the apocrypha. I just can't remember the book, but it's like you couldn't see, and you probably know it better than me. But.
Yeah, the apocrypha has a lot of information that expounds on what Genesis has in it. I look at the Bible, a lot of the Bible as like bullet point summaries in certain instances where it gives you a little bit of information, but it doesn't go like extremely deep. And then you have you have other accounts, whether it be in the apocrypha or one of the various forms of the apocrypha, or you get different accounts or more in-depth accounts in other places, like the works of Josephus or the Book of Enoch, and so on and so forth like that. But yeah, that's dope. That's dope that you mentioned Lamech. Anybody else want to share what they've been reading? Well, not what they've been. We know what we've been reading, but what they got out of, or anything interesting that they noticed while they were reading. So,
if there's no one else, I've got a couple things that I could point out. I found that in the 6 days of creating everything, right? You had creation taking place in the beginning, right? Then you had 6 days consecutively of things being made, right? And if you take the first 3 days and then the second 3 days, you find that each of those 3 days, the first 3 is spaces being made, right? And then the second set of 3 days, you find things being made to fill those spaces. And then when you come to chapter 2, you find the Shabbat being made. And going on that line of logic that things are made, or space for things are made, and then things are made to fill that space. When Shabbat is made, it's almost as if the Most High made a specific space of time and filled it with himself. So that was something that kind of stuck out to me. Another thing that stuck out to me in this particular portion is when I believe I've said it before on Shabbat Talk, but when Cain and Abel offered up their offerings, Abel offered up animals and the fat thereof, right? Which we don't actually come to. We don't come to the commandment about burning the fat until we get to Leviticus. So that's just another indication that the Torah was in effect at creation and that they well knew it long before it was given at Mount Sinai.
Yeah. Good point. Because if that's the case, right, then Cain would have been already knowledgeable as to what the Most High would have accepted.
Yep.
So by purposefully not presenting that type of offering, he did so out of rebellion.
Yes.
And that's why his offering was rejected.
Yes, it wasn't simply because he brought the wrong thing. It was because he knew what he was supposed to bring, and he chose not to bring it.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So on that note, one of the things we were doing our studies the other day, it clicked on to me. It was like, why was Cain's offering not accepted, right? Because God gave Cain and Abel two different duties. It was Cain's duty to basically till the earth. So why was it that his fruits, especially when we see things like the grain offerings and Feast of First Fruits, why wouldn't his fruit from the ground from his hard work be accepted? Well, when we went back in Genesis at the fall, God cursed the ground. And so by Cain offering something that was cursed, that was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So that I've never noticed before. And then it also it closes that gap for us to assume things like, well, did he know right from wrong? There was no Bible. No, why did he know? But he knew that the ground was cursed. It wasn't until after Noah that he says no longer is the ground cursed. And then within that, something that I see was erroneous is that God be at the fall when he cursed the ground, that means that man is supposed to work the ground in hard labor. Well, I didn't see that because he said he made man to till the ground. So that wasn't the curse. The curse was not now man had to work for food, because that was always going to be the case. Adam was supposed to do that in the first place. So, and plus we still he tilled, we had to till the earth before the fall, after the fall, and we're still tilling it now. But yeah, it wasn't until Noah where he said, I'm gonna give you the rainbow, promise not to flood the earth, and also the ground is not cursed anymore. Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, fire.
Now, what I would say with that was in the Garden of Eden, all the plants were already grown. So it wasn't laborious. It wasn't like he had to work hard to do it. It was like clipping trees here and there and deciding how he wanted things to grow, like wrapping a vine around this or grafting one branch into another. It wasn't laborious work. It wasn't like, oh, I'm so tired from doing this. It was just like, oh, this is pleasant. Let me do this and see what it is. So it wasn't like he had to actually labor. It was more of just pleasant walking through and saying, no, I think I'd like this better this way. You know what I'm saying? And after he was expelled from the garden, at that point, then he had to plant seeds and get them to grow, and that becomes labor intensive, right? Planting crops from seed to harvest is labor intensive, but just clipping and trimming branches and grafting things and, you know, the various things like that is not very labor intensive. But, you know, plowing a field, especially when the ground's barren, and running irrigation systems through them, that is pretty labor intensive. So it appears as though there was a limited amount of labor that was necessary before, and the labor became multiplied extremely after.
So then the question would become, well, since, well, he said that no longer is the ground cursed. We still are labor intensive. You know, we're still working hard. But I would go as far as to say that's because now of our disobedience.
Because of our
Because
exactly.
yeah,
Because of
because but not because of our disobedience in the fact that, you know, the Israelites were overtaken by Babylon and Egypt and all, not that, but our flat out disobedience to the law, because he gave us in the laws about how to be proper reapers and sowers and letting your land rest and all of that kind of stuff, right?
yes,
So
yes.
we've gotten away from actually keeping the law properly, so we're not seeing the benefits of being obedient.
You know, it's crazy. Like, I don't know the exact specifications or when it's done or everything, but I remember in biology, there's certain nutrients that are removed from the soil whenever you grow certain types of crops. Most crops remove nutrients from the soil, but legumes like beans, they actually put nutrients back into the soil. And man, in his infinite wisdom, thinking that he knows best, has said, oh, well, hey, after so many years of growing this, then we need to plant some beans for a year and it'll replenish the soil. And essentially what's going on with that is they're trying to get to where every year they can reap a harvest without having to adhere to the commandments of the Most High, saying, hey, after so many years, let the land rest. Because if you let the land rest, it's going to recuperate those nutrients automatically, right? And it's like man's trying to come up with a way to do it without following God's commandments, you know. And I would personally say, speculation, of course, that it's inferior and substandard, and it's still going to produce inferior crops in the long run. But that's something that that goes on with farming. You know, every so many years, farmers will plant beans and legumes in order to replenish the soil, rather than having to simply just obey the commandments of God.
Exactly what I was saying.
Facts. Okay. Well, I'll just make a quick connection between Genesis, the Torah portion of Genesis, and John. Another thing that stood out to me was the connection between John 1:1, where it says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with Elohim, and the Word was Elohim. The same was in the beginning. And then you go to Genesis 1:1, and it says, in the beginning, the Most High created the heavens and the earth. But then when you go to Genesis chapter 2, it says, let us make man in our image and in our likeness. So that's indicating that somebody was with the Most High in the beginning, because who is our? Our is a plural word, right? Even in the Hebraic understanding, it was used in a plural sense. So someone was with the Most High in the beginning. Well, John chapter 1 gives us that answer, because it says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with the Most High, and the Word was Elohim. Elohim is a plural word. When you see the word God in the scriptures, when you see the word God, God is translated from the Greek, but comes from the Hebrew, which is Elohim. Elohim is a plural word. It just basically means a celestial, right? Somebody, someone, something, an entity that is beyond us. So
Which actually you get logos, which is where it says, in the beginning was the Word, right? The logos, right? The logos actually even comes down to modern English language as logo, right? So, like, for example, when you see the logo of a corporation, you don't even have to read it. Your mind doesn't have to read the words in the logo to know what the logo represents, right? Mm-hmm. If the logo even has words, like, you know, you got the Taco Bell logo, for example. When someone sees that, they automatically know that's Taco Bell. You see the Nike logo, people already know that means Nike, right? So that's just another thing. Logos is something that's comprehended without needing to be totally understood, right? Mm-hmm. Sorry to cut you off on that, though.
No worries. And getting back to the word, John defines what the word was in verse 14. It's the last verse of the Torah portion reading. Verse 14 says, "And the word became flesh and dwelt among us," depending on the version you're reading out of. Some other versions says the word became flesh and pitched a tent among us, but the word tent is used there is talking about the tabernacle of the body, our body being a temple, our tabernacle. So they're saying that the word became flesh, literally became flesh. That same word that was with the Most High in the beginning. So it literally it completes from Genesis all the way to John and everything in between, that the Messiah was with the Most High in the beginning. Because in verse 14, it says that through the word was everything made. So as you go back to Genesis and you're seeing the Most High creating all of these things, he's using his word. He's using the Messiah. So the Messiah has a much more significant impact when it comes to creation and a lot of the different matters that happens throughout the scriptures that we just attribute to the Most High himself. And with that being said, let's go ahead and talk about the mistress first. We'll talk about mistress first. And y'all know how we do it on Truth Talk Radio. We tell you what it is first. We don't just let it get to the end and let you figure out where we stand, right? So we know mistress and concubines both have very negative connotations. They have stigmas in modern day culture. The problem is the way we understand things here in America is way off. It's wrong. We have a westernized perspective, and the Bible is written from an easternized perspective. Mm-hmm. Okay, yep. It's from an Eastern culture. Biblical culture has nothing to do with American culture. So what in
fact, you can say it's the exact opposite.
In many ways, it's the exact opposite. Absolutely. Yeah. So what we deem okay in American culture, the Bible says no. Yeah. And what the Bible deems okay, America says no.
Yeah, they're like, nope, you can't do that.
Okay, so right out the gate, mistress. When you think about a mistress, I'm gonna ask the ladies here. When y'all hear the word mistress, what y'all think of?
Husband side piece.
Husband side piece, absolutely, side piece. What else? What else you think about when you hear the word mistress?
Husband cheating on his wife.
Bingo.
Being mistress on the side.
Mm-hmm. Cheating, having a mistress on the side, right?
Yeah.
Lower level, not as high as the wife.
Not okay.
Okay, yeah.
Well, I like that perspective because we're gonna discuss that there in great detail tonight.
Just so everyone knows, I have no idea what was prepared for this topic.
Yeah, I didn't tell him nothing. We're so busy during the week.
I literally just found out a few hours ago.
Oh, yeah, and all he knew was the topic. I didn't give him nothing. Because we're so busy during the week. Like normally we try to like communicate throughout the week and figure out what the topic is and everything like that. But we're so busy. I was just like, well, whatever I'm studying individually, I'll just share with everybody else for the topic. I didn't have enough time to study two different topics this week, to be honest. But somebody says sloppy seconds. Who's that?
Peter.
Hey, sloppy seconds. Okay.
Sloppy seconds. Wow.
I like it. I like it. No, but these are all
And
good points.
legitimately, that's what our culture tends to think of when these words come about, right? So,
yeah, I'm not mad at it.
We need to strip away the falsehoods and recognize what's the real truth. Because if you have an incorrect perspective of what a word means, you're going to use that word in a way that diminishes the actual intention of the word.
Yep, absolutely. And so if we are to be believers, right? If we are to be believers, hold on, let me stop that. And we're supposed to be living by the Bible and following the Bible, then our understandings of certain things has to be biblical, not secular, right? So that's why it's important that we always get back to what the Bible says about whatever it is. All right. So the mistress, I said the mistress and the harlot. I meant to say the mistress and the concubine. Where did harlot came from? I might have said it in my mind and subconsciously wrote it down, but it's the mistress and the concubine. What are they really biblically? So in the modern westernized world, we come across certain norms that seem to have an absolute meaning because of the world we live in. This could be because of societal constructs created to control, or just a widespread similar understanding. Certain words, titles, or even phrases can hold a meaning in modern day society that is completely different than its original meaning. Today we'll be discussing two topics that fall into this category: the mistress and the concubine. They both have unfortunately felt the brunt of scrutiny due to the perceived negative reputation, but is the modern view on these two concepts negative in the biblical sense? Even in the Christian realm, being called a mistress or having the designation of a concubine can easily be derogatory. But let me be clear, these terms, according to the Bible, are not negative. On the contrary, as we will see throughout this presentation, it's actually the opposite. Let us begin with the mistress. So we're going to hit a scripture and then we're going to go into the definition. And so in Genesis 16:4, it says, "And he went in unto Hagar, and she conceived. And when she saw that she had conceived, her mistress was despised in her eyes." So Hagar, in this situation, was not the mistress. And we understand, if you understand the story about Abraham, Hagar, and everything like that, it was Sarah who was the wife. Sarah gave Hagar, her handmaiden, to Abraham to have children through her. So Hagar wasn't the mistress. It says her mistress was despised in her eyes. So that means Hagar started to despise Sarah in her eyes after she conceived and bare a son. So the mistress in this situation is actually Sarah, not Hagar. And we know that Sarah was the wife. Sarah wasn't the handmaiden. Sarah wasn't the slave. Sarah wasn't the side piece, the sloppy seconds, right? So Hagar was the handmaid to Sarah, Abraham's wife. So Sarah was Hagar's mistress. Now, typically, according to Western view, a mistress is someone who is the side piece of the man or husband and is deemed a whore or a harlot. However, in this instance, the mistress is the wife and woman of the house. I said, I believe the context used here for mistress clearly puts Sarah in a place of honor, but let us see what the word mistress means in Hebrew. Now, we're going to get a lot of meaning and definition tonight because it's good to layer it home. But for time purposes, I'm going to just hit certain parts, right? I can send this to anybody if you want to look it over in depth, but we already, at 50 minutes. So I want to make sure we get through this. So in the Strong's Concordance, number 1404, the word for mistress is Gebereth, or however you want to call it, Gebereth. And it means lady or queen or mistress, right? You see it here again, lady, queen, and mistress throughout. Mistress of servants, and this in the various scriptures that it's talking about in the context, this just means that the mistress is in charge of the servants, right? Lady, mistress, it's the feminine word of Gebir, okay? A lady and a mistress. So it says, it's lady, queen, or mistress. Lady is a position of honor among women. Like you think of like the old English term, like you're a lady, right? You want to act like a lady. So that terminology originates in the Hebrew from the word mistress. A queen, and I'm not talking about the dramatic etymology of the word queen that derives from the old English reference to a whore, but rather a literal queen, right? Because long before you had the term queen used in Old English to denote, in regards to its etymology, to denote somebody who is a whore. But we're talking about a biblical queen. So the wife of a king or a ruler. And then mistress has two different meanings. The first is a title indicating some type of authority or control over something, usually the household. And that's in 1 Kings 17 and 17. The second is a sorceress or a medium, someone dealing in witchcraft. And you'll see an example of this in Nahum chapter 3, verse 4. And we'll get into more specifically later, but it says that the word we're using right now is the feminine version or feminine form of Gabir. So if you look at Gabir means Lord. So if the word in Hebrew, if mistress in Hebrew is the feminine of the word Lord, and the word Lord in Hebrew means master, right? And even this word Gabir, it comes from Gabar. So if you see a master and a Lord, let's see what Gabar says. Gabar is to be strong, to be mighty, right? To be strong, to be mighty. To be strong, mighty, absolute, mighty in power, and to prevail. So you're prevailing over your enemies, you're prevailing over your obstacles, anything. You're receiving blessings, you're favored by the Most High. It is a really good thing. All of these things have good meanings and good connotations. So, and all of this is derived, or mistress, the word mistress is derived from all of these things, right? To be great, to be mighty, to prevail, to have more strength, to strengthen, to be stronger, right? So Gabar means to be strong and mighty, to prevail over thine enemies. This doesn't seem like something that would designate a whore or a harlot unless you are jokingly referring to prevailing over a man in the bedroom. The second word in the Hebrew language used for mistress is Strong's Concordance number 1172. Bala or Beela. And then the definition says a mistress. But when you look into further in the Brown Driver Driggs, it says medium, mistress of the house. Remember I said one is a status, right? Being in charge of the house, typically the house. 1 Kings 17:17, right? The other one I said is in Nahum 3 and 4, right? Well, one utilization of the word mistress, and this word mistress, is necromancer and sorceress. Right? So you have two. But this word is the feminine word of this word. And it's Baal with the apostrophe in it. Right? So if you look at Baal with an apostrophe in it, it means owner or Lord. Owner or Lord. So even if you look at the second word used for mistress, and all where it's the feminine of something, and that word comes from something else, it's always positive, right? And that Baal comes from this Baal 1166, to marry, to rule over, right? To marry, to rule over, to get a husband, right? And then it says here, own, possess, especially a wife or a concubine. We'll get more into that part a little later on when we're talking about concubines. But to have dominion over, to be a husband, marry, a wife, to be master, hence as the nominative from Baal, to marry, have dominion, be a husband. So all of these things is positive. They all denote authority. They all denote honor. They all denote, a position of having an elevated status. Last time I checked, being the mistress in modern day time means you are not the wife. You may be trying to be the wife by having the husband leave her and marry you, but you are definitely not the wife. We will come back to this particular word, like I said, when we're doing concubines. So if you're just looking at the literal definitions, their origins, their usages and everything like that in the context of the Bible, you don't get any of that when you're talking about a mistress. But let's look at some more scriptures. Genesis 16, verses 8 and 9. And he said, Hagar, Sarah's maid, or Sarai's maid, she ain't Sarah yet, she's Sarai. Whence comest thou, and whither wilt thou go? And she said, I flee from the face of my mistress, Sarai. And the angel of the Most High said unto her, return to thy mistress, and submit thyself under her hands. So, if when we read about Hagar giving birth and despising her mistress, if you ever read that backwards and you just assume just because it said mistress, that mistress was talking about Sarah instead of Hagar, it's possible to do it, right? This sets it straight. This tells you who's the mistress and who's not the mistress. So from Hagar's mouth, she said, I'm running from my mistress, Sarah. Sarah's the mistress. Sarah's the wife, right? Then the angel tells her to go back. And not only go back, but to submit thyself under her hands. That means return and submit yourself under the rulership and authority of your mistress, of your boss, so to speak, right? There's an authority figure. She was under the authority of Sarah. Again, we see the relationship between Hagar and Sarah, with Sarah being the head or mistress of the household. Proverbs 30 and 23. For an odious woman, when she is married, and a handmaid that is heir to her mistress. Again, handmaid is typically a servant in a subservient position, and that is heir to her mistress. We already confirmed a mistress most of the time is talking about something positive, some type of significance. So to be heir to something means to receive some type of inheritance from someone who is senior or superior. So we see here that a handmaid is heir to the mistress or the woman that is married or a wife. It's not the other way around. Now here is in 1 Kings 17:17, like we mentioned it already, but we're going to see what it says. And it came to pass after these things that the son of the woman, the mistress of the house, fell sick, and his sickness was so sore that there was no breath left in him. Mistress of the house, the person that's in charge of the house. Mistress. 2 Kings 5 and 3. And she said unto her mistress, with the Most High, my Elohim, were with the prophet that is in Samaria, for he would recover him of his leprosy. So she said unto her mistress, this is denoting that she's having a conversation and she's talking to somebody who is in the authority over her. In both of these scriptures, we can see the context. The mistress is in a position of authority in the home. In Psalms 123 and 2, it says, behold, as the eyes of the servants look into the hand of their masters, and as the eyes of a maiden unto the hand of her mistress. So our eyes wait upon the Most High, our Elohim, until that he have mercy upon us. So you're going to see the connection, right? Servant, master, maiden, mistress. Us to the Most High. We ain't higher than him. He's higher than us. So a master is higher than a servant, and a mistress is higher than a maiden. That's just all it's making it. And then it does the same thing in Isaiah 24 and 2. And it shall be as with the people, so with the priest, and with the servant, so with his master, and with the maid, so with her mistress, as with the buyer, so with the seller, as with the lender, so with the borrower, as with the taker of usury, so with the giver of usury. So it's the same thing. People and priest, servant, master, maid, mistress, buyer, seller, lender, borrower, taker of usury, and giver. So if you're giving something or you're taking it, that difference can be also used synonymously with how the relationship between a person and a priest, and a servant and a master, or a maid and a mistress. They all saying the same thing. All right, so this is Nahum 3 and 4. Remember, I was talking about witchcraft, right? Because of the multitude of the whoredoms of the well-favored harlot, the mistress of witchcrafts, that selleth nations through her whoredoms, and families through her witchcrafts. So in this verse, the mistress used here denotes witchcraft. One may take notice to the mention of harlot and whoredoms, but it isn't referring to sex directly. It's referring to idolatry and other abominable practices of the city of Nineveh that the city Nineveh committed. See verse 7 of the same chapter. So if you go to verse 7, because this is verse 4, go to verse 7, it says, and it shall come to pass that all they that look upon thee shall flee from thee and say, Nineveh is laid waste. Who will bemoan her? Whence shall I seek comforts for her? So two things to get out of this. The first thing is, it's talking about Nineveh. That's first. The second thing is, Nineveh and its inhabitants are being referred to as a woman. It's being personified as a woman. That's why up here you get the terminologies of mistress of witchcrafts, her witchcrafts, her whoredoms, the well-favored harlot. All of these are feminine traits. And that's why it's feminine, because Nineveh is being personified in a feminine sense right here. But it's not talking about sex in terms of whoredoms and being a harlot. It's about idolatry and all the stuff that Nineveh was doing. So as we can clearly see, a mistress is not a side piece or some type of harlot or whore, but that of a wife, the head of a household, a queen, the wife of a king or ruler, someone with authority, a position of honor. So the next time you hear someone use mistress in a negative context, if it's not regarding witchcraft, then be sure to correct them. It's time we start putting some respect back on that name, right? I don't know if you guys are familiar with like these like Roman shows. I like watching Roman TV, and there's like Spartacus and Domina and Rome, and it's a bunch of them that I like to watch. But in Roman culture, Roman society, the dominus is the head of the household. He's the man. He's the one in charge, right? He runs the household. But his wife is called the domina. Well, domina in Roman culture is the mistress. That's what it is. It's mistress. So when they say domina and they bow and they give her respect, they're saying mistress. It's the same thing. So the understanding of mistress isn't just solely in the Hebraic perspective, because the Hebraic perspective is the original perspective, and that went out to other nations too. They have it's a widespread understanding when you're talking about an ancient Easternized perspective. It's not until you get to a westernized perspective, a more modern perspective, that we take these terms and we add our own meaning to them, or we twist them and say this is what they mean now.
Yes, very, very, very good stuff. Very good stuff. It's interesting that you would even bring up Dominus and everything, because I was just listening to an audio earlier this week, and it talked about, it said, go and look up the word domination, right? Mm-hmm. And what it means, what it actually means, because most people don't even really know. And then he said, look up the word domineer, right? And what dominate and domineer, they're although they have similar meanings, they're very different in the actual application of what the word means, mm-hmm. right? And it's just very interesting that you brought that up, because that was something that was earlier this week was on my radar.
Man, all praises. It came to mind as I was doing the study a little bit, and me and my wife just finished watching season 2 of Domino, so it's kind of fresh on the brain. But you know, it's easy to kind of get those mixed up, because I thought mistress was negative too. Mm-hmm. I'm not trying to act like I know better. I did the same thing, right? But once I understood what it was, and I gotta give shout out to Brother Nabi. Brother Nabi, man, we were having a conversation. He actually put this on my radar in regards to mistress. That's kind of started this whole study on it. It kind of branched off and encompassed concubines as well. Because me personally, this was a personal kind of topic to cover, because I don't like, if anybody knows me, I'm protective over my sisters. And I'm not talking about like my sisters that's my family. I'm talking about any sister, any woman. I'm protective of them naturally. So when I hear certain aspects of negative association for women,
Yeah, like degrading,
right?
like
It hits a nerve for me. So I wanted to pull it out from the scriptures so that we can kind of put this to bed in some regards. Because if you now, even if it's, it's only a few of us on here, but I'm sure we're going to talk to more people, right? Like, oh, did you actually know that this is what a mistress means, or this is what a concubine is, or whatever the case may be? And the people watching it too. So now you're getting that out. And so you kind of take away from all of the negative aspect, because this is literally what we make it in America, and we already know America ain't the poster child for righteousness.
right
By any means, it is not the poster child for righteousness.
No.
So, like I said, this is the halfway point. Does anybody have any questions or any thoughts about the information that has been shared so far in regards to mistress? Did anybody know that a mistress was actually positive according to the Bible?
I've read it many times. I read or listen to Genesis almost every day, and I never caught on to it. I've heard that over and over about Sarai and her, Hagar. Didn't catch that though. I'm glad you're talking about it, because to me it was always a negative thing.
Right. All praises.
See, that's where, you can hear something so many times, and then one day it just clicks and you have a cognition about it, right?
Yeah. So if somebody refers to you as a mistress now, are you going to get offended, or are you going to be like, hey, which mistress you talk about? You talk about the Bible mistress? If you talk about the Bible mistress, then yeah, you already know. But if you're just trying to, throw some shade, ain't nobody no side piece around here. You got to check them.
Oh, where can I get a concordance? I don't have to worry about versions that are incorrect or not accurate.
Well, so you do have to worry about
you pretty much any store, any bookstore, and get a concordance. There's several different versions. Strong's Concordance is not difficult to find if you want to have a paper, and I mean it's about this thick. It's pretty thick. Now, if you want to have a paper copy that you can refer to, but you can also just go online and just look it up online too.
I can show you how to get to it. Matter of fact, remind me before we end it, after we finish with the main presentation, I'll show you how I like to look things up in the concordance. You just using solely the internet, so you don't gotta necessarily go and buy anything. But it is always good to have a book on hand, just in case Wi-Fi go out. And I don't know if you noticed the scrolling thing around the bottom of the screen right now is, we know that bad things is coming and we prepping for it. So when those bad things come, we ain't gonna have access to no internet and stuff like that. So it's always good to have a hard copy. But pretty much you can literally Google whatever scripture you're trying to look up, but instead of putting NIV, KJV behind it, you just type in lexicon and it'll pull up the lexicon of it. And when you click on the lexicon, you can literally click on the numbers of the Strong's Concordance words and it'll take you straight to the Strong's Concordance. Like the Strong's Concordance stuff that you saw on the presentation, I literally copied and pasted that directly from the internet. So I'll show you how to do it before we close out.
The Strong's Concordance, I will say, is an indispensable tool to really dive deep into what Scripture is saying. Because so often translators, maybe not even for nefarious reasons, but just because your limited understanding or so forth, would translate it a certain way, and that may not necessarily encapsulate the whole aspect of the words used. Because I mean, even having studied other languages myself, I know that some words in other languages carry much more context than a single word in English, right? So if you're like, for example, Shema in Hebrew, it means to listen, to obey, to hear and do, right? But when you look at it in English, it just says listen or hear, right? Depending on which version you're looking at. So, hear and listen are accurate translations of the word, but they're not totally accurate in the whole understanding of what the word in Hebrew.
Not getting the full scope.
Yeah, you don't get the full scope of it. You only get a little snippet of what the word actually means. So, even when the translators were not trying to do something nefarious, there's still things that are overlooked, even not necessarily intentionally, when it comes to translating things. So,
sometimes they do the best that they can with what they have, and sometimes it's hard to translate a word to another language because there might not be another word in that other language to translate it to. So then they have to take it from, a dog being translated to this new language. There's no word for a dog. So now you got to try to figure out like an animal that makes noise that's loud. Okay, you're gonna get that word and put it in there. And then you read it and you're like, why is it saying a hippo was in the tent? Like what? So,
right.
I mean, that's a really dumbed down version of it, but that's kind of what happens. But anybody else find anything interesting or learn anything or have a question or?
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom, brother.
I'm gonna pick on my sis, Andrea. Come on. I know you got something for me.
Well, I got myself a strong concordance. I got a hard copy. And today we were reading with my kids, and we decided to look up the word Adam and what it actually meant.
Mm-hmm.
And it means like red, the color red. So man was made from red dirt.
Mm-hmm.
Is my interpretation of that. And I thought that was just really fascinating. So I do recommend, what's her name? I can't see her name on the screen. Get in the concordance because it will help you tremendously in your study. But as I said, I don't know how to access it online. So I did go out and I got a hard copy and I really do like
I'll show everybody how to do it.
Okay.
Yeah, I would personally say that the knowing how to do it with a hard copy, knowing how to go through it and look through it is definitely a good skill you should have. Mm-hmm. It makes it a lot easier to do it with the internet and online, but if you know how to do that, right? But the ability to be able to do it with the book itself is definitely very valuable. And even if you're going to primarily use the internet like I do, having a Strong's Concordance on hand that you can use a physical copy is definitely of tremendous value.
And I found out that some things that you're reading, like the value of like a dinero or something, and it actually breaks it down and tell you, well, the value of it is this or that. So I find that kind of interesting. It has a lot in there that I really like to access. So it's pretty good.
Mm-hmm. What versions do y'all have? Because I prefer a hard copy over just going to the internet.
Yeah, I have hold on. So I got the Strong's Exhaustive Concordance, and it's on Amazon. You can probably get it for like $20.
That's the same one I have.
Yep, I got the. I just went and got mine. As far as being in the library, this is. I want to have a study like this.
That's why.
Now this is
this ancient one. I have a Strong's as well. This is the older model.
Let's go.
Good stuff.
Hey.
Yep.
Google. The one you have in the chat.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure. Wait, real quick. Does anybody disagree? I didn't even ask that. Does anybody disagree that a mistress is still negative? No?
No, I have to say that I think like the older folks, I think that they use that word appropriately. It's like the newer generation that have spawned it into something negative. Like somebody that's older,
Mm-hmm.
like I'm from Jamaica, and like an older gentleman, they say, "Good afternoon, mistress. How are you doing?" So I've heard that used that way before. I think it's now like in this more modern times that I think we put a different negative spin on the word.
Well, you from Jamaica, really? Man,
Yes,
you don't even sound like it at all.
yes, I'm from Jamaica, the beautiful island of Jamaica. Yes.
Ah.
I didn't know. So,
I just thought my part with my people, but
I actually used to date a chick from Jamaica, and I would never have guessed, listening to your voice, that you were from Jamaica. You don't sound like it.
okay, but it
It's just
depends on who.
it's just surprising. I wouldn't have thought you were from Jamaica.
Yes, I'm from Jamaica very much.
Oh, that's awesome though. I'd love to go to Jamaica.
Yeah, it's beautiful there.
Yeah.
It really is. Okay.
all right. So the concubine. Anybody got any pre-thoughts on a concubine? If somebody calls you a concubine, you get mad.
Let's bring out all the presuppositions.
Yeah. When you hear concubine, what you think about?
I have to say, I would have had the same thought about a concubine, but after that, I'm open. I'm just gonna listen. Yeah.
Concubine is a sex slave.
Ooh, that's great. I like that. Because we're gonna
That's
talk about
terrible.
that too.
You know, I used to fellowship with these.
That's terrible.
I used to fellowship with these folks, and this one old man, like he was like his 80s or something, and he used to come to fellowship with us, and he said something, and it was the kookiest, funniest thing he said. He said, "Man, I wish I lived back in the Bible times. They had all those concubines." He was like, I could have like 12 concubines. this old 80-year-old man just says, "Yeah, I could have like 12 concubines if I lived back then."
That's nasty. His old self talking about concubines. But my brother mentioned a sex slave. I wasn't saying having a sex slave is awesome. I was saying that he mentioned sex slave because we're going to address that understanding of a concubine as well. Exactly. So now we're going to examine the concubine, which has also inherited a bad name according to modern understanding. A quick synopsis of what a concubine is. Remember, we tell you up front, right? It can be explained as a woman who is a wife but does not have inheritance rights. The title of wife and concubine are different in the fact that a wife has inheritance rights, but a concubine can be elevated to the status of wife at the husband's discretion. There are various instances where a woman could become a concubine for a political or military alliance. She could be a slave from a conquered nation. She could voluntarily enter into concubinage for protection and covering by the husband, or even be chosen as a concubine to provide children by the man, either because either because he wants more children, or maybe because his first wife may be barren. But the title of concubine is not negative in nature, although some try to associate it within a sexual context, right? Like a sex slave. I'm not saying that didn't happen, but that's not the only thing a concubine is, right? Like you can be a mistress of sorcery. The word mistress is positive, but when you look at it from that context, you're talking about sorcery. A mistress now has a negative connotation. So let's examine the word in the Strong's Concordance. Boom, pulling it up is Pilagesh, however you want to pronounce it, Pilagesh. So it just means concubine here, but it says perhaps of foreign origin. And then concubines, and paramours. Paramours is just the masculine form of it. Properly, a young girl, right? Concubine, either paramour, concubinage, right? And then, like I said, paramour is the masculine, right? But that's all it says for the Strong's Concordance. Because the word apparently didn't originate in Hebrew, they borrowed it from Greek. So a concubine, according to the Strong's Concordance, is very vague. The word seemingly is a loan word from the Greek, a concubine. This doesn't help gauge clarity to the true Hebraic definition, so we must look towards the scriptural context and Hebraic culture for answers. First, let's go back and take a look at Strong's Concordance 1166, Baal, which means to rule over or to marry, as it mentions an interesting fact about concubines. Remember I said we're going to go back to it, right? So looking at that one little section, to marry, to rule over, it says to own, possess, especially a wife or concubine. So a husband owns or possesses both a wife or a concubine. This is important because a general consensus among some scholars is that concubines are simply slaves, servants, or sexual property of the man, and hold no significance in the realm of familial association in a Hebraic culture, right? Like the sex slave. If that's the only understanding of a concubine, then now that concubine is just, that word is just tainted. The meaning or the viewpoint of that word is just completely tainted. It's important to note that here a wife is also labeled as a possession, not just a concubine. Now, to expound on this notion, let's look at how not only are concubines mentioned in the lineage of Hebraic figures, the children that they had with their husbands were also acknowledged and listed. In fact, in case of Rizpah, her name Rizpah, the concubine of King Saul, she actually had one of her sons briefly inherit the throne. So in that case, let me click. Yeah, I'll start on that one first. It was okay, Rizpah. So in brief, I ain't gonna read this whole article, but it says Rizpah is the concubine of Saul, the first king of Israel. She has two sons, one of whom briefly takes the throne. However, both of her children are killed by David, and she helps ensure that their bodies get the correct burial. And if you want to like really go into like all of the scriptures that's talking about this, it's like all listed right here, right? But she was a concubine of Saul. And yeah, in 2 Samuel 15, 13 through 17.
Later probably would have been David's concubine, since all of Saul's wives and concubines were given to David. So
it did mention that David married her. So David did marry her, and she became a wife of David, as well. So, okay, so Genesis 22, verse 24. And his concubine, whose name was Reumah, she bare also Teba and Gaham and Thahash and Maachah, right? So you have a concubine. She's named. So this is important because in Hebrew culture, lineage is important, and like legacy and just having a name that you're leaving behind. So for your name to be even mentioned is very important, right? Because if they were just slaves that didn't have any significance, there would be no point in even mentioning her name, right? And they might not even mention the kids at all, because if the mother is insignificant, then that would make the kids insignificant. So you don't even have to mention the kids that was born from the concubine. But the kids are mentioned here by name, but the concubine herself was mentioned by name, right? That's significant to note, right? So the concubine Reumah, she bare these kids. Genesis 36 and 12. And Timnah was concubine to Eliphaz, Esau's son, and she bare to Eliphaz Amalek. So again, named, concubine, bear children. Judges 8 and 31. And his concubine that was in Shechem, she also bare him a son whose name he called Abimelech. First Chronicles 1:32. Now the sons of Keturah, Abraham's concubine, she bare Zimran and Jokshan and Medan and Midian and Ishbak and Shua, and the sons of Jokshan, Sheba, and Dedan. So these just this is the grandkids, so they don't matter. But not that they don't matter, but the kids that she bare was these guys. Again, you see, she's named, she's a concubine, and the kids I mentioned. First Chronicles 2:46 and 48. And Ephah, Caleb's concubine, bare Aaron and Moses and Gazez, and then Aaron begat Gazez. And Macha, Caleb's concubine, bare Sheber and Terhana. You see it again. Let's see. The sons of Manasseh, Ashriel, whom she bare, but his concubine, the Aramites, bare Maker, and the Maker, the father of Gilead. So you see it. I don't gotta really talk about it too much. Now let's examine the incident where Reuben sleeps with his father's concubine and observe Reuben's reaction, because this is important. All right, the fact that Reuben slept with his pop's concubine and how he reacted and the way in which he reacted, and also the historical, the biblical and the historical significance, because it's mentioned elsewhere in the Bible that talks about it, right? So we'll see all of this. And it came to pass, is Genesis 35 and 22, and it came to pass when Israel dwelt in the land that Reuben went and lay with Bilhah, his father's concubine, and Israel heard it. Israel here, and Israel here is talking about Jacob. It's not talking about the nation. This is Genesis. So Jacob, Reuben's father, heard about what Reuben did. Okay. And then it says, now the sons of Jacob are 12, and then it goes on. But when you fast forward to Genesis chapter 49, verses 3 through 4, this is when Jacob is talking to all of his children, all 12 of his children, and he's telling them basically who they are, what he thinks of them, what they're going to become, their significance. He's describing their personality traits as well. A lot of people misread this entire chapter and associate that with like physical characteristics of like who the true Israelites are in the Bible, but during this time when he's talking to Reuben specifically, he says, Reuben, thou art my firstborn, my might, and the beginning of my strength, the excellency of dignity and the excellency of power. So to be somebody's might, the beginning of strength, excellency of dignity, excellency of power, all of these things were associated with the firstborn. The firstborn should inherit the blessing from the father and carry on his name, but also carry on the responsibility of leading the family when the father passes away. This was really big in Hebrew culture, right? A lot of y'all heard about, Jacob and Esau, right? And Esau was the firstborn, so he should have received the blessing, but he sold his birthright for the porridge, right? These things are very significant. They're just not stories in the Bible just because. So after Jacob tells Reuben all of this, he says, unstable as water, thou shalt not excel, because thou wentest up to thy father's bed, then defiledest thou it. He went up to my couch. So he said, you unstable as water, then you will not excel. You will not profit. You will not do all of the great things that my firstborn should do, because you defiled my bed. You defiled your father's bed, right? But this might sound a little bit vague, right? Like, what is he talking about? Okay. First Chronicles chapter 5, verse 1, it says, now the sons of Reuben, the firstborn of Israel, for he was the firstborn, but for so as much as he defiled his father's bed, his birthright was given unto the sons of Joseph, the son of Israel. And the genealogy is not to be reckoned after the birthright. So because not only did Jacob tell Reuben, he basically corrected him and was mad. He cut him out. Joseph was given the inheritance that Reuben was supposed to receive.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I mean? So my association with this is all of this it goes back to the fact that Reuben defiled his concubine. If a concubine is just simply a sex slave that don't have any
then what difference would it make?
It wouldn't make a difference.
He'd just be like, oh yeah, she's my sex slave. Sure, you can have her too. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Now think about it. If you go back up to here and substitute that word for wife, then you could probably understand Jacob's anger a little bit more, right?
Yeah, because a concubine was a lot more than simply a woman you had sex with. I mean, it was a concubine. You're probably going to get more into it through the study, so I won't give too much.
Think about it like this. A wife is a woman you have sex with, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's not all a wife is, but that's a part of it. Sex is a part of it. So it's a negative. It's negative when you're talking about sex with a concubine, but it's positive when you talk about sex with a wife. When both are wives, you just have one that has a more prominent position and one that has a lesser position.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And that could not even necessarily be for it could just be that some people just don't have the ability to make sound decisions, right? So someone who has an inability to make good choices would obviously need to be put on a level where they had less authority, because the choices that they make are not necessarily the best, right? Whereas if you have someone who can make very good choices and is of a sound mind, you're going to put them on a level of authority where, yeah, this person can oversee the things, the affairs of my house. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Because the wife was the mistress, right? The wife was the person in charge of the house.
Mm-hmm.
To be in charge of the house, you're literally running. If you guys have servants, you're in charge of, telling the servants what to do, making sure everything's in order. If you have kids, you're in charge of instructing the kids, teaching the kids. Yep. You know what I'm saying? Like everything, it was a big responsibility. You were a manager, like a legit manager.
Yeah. Because when you look at biblically, a marriage was not simply out of love. Of course, they loved each other, or they grew to love each other eventually, right? But it wasn't simply out of love. A marriage in biblical times was a business transaction, right? Not purely a business transaction, but it had an element of being a business transaction, mm-hmm. And so you get to factor all of that in. And if somebody's not a savvy businesswoman, she can't perform the necessary tasks of managing a household, then she's not going to be put in that position of responsibility. And being a concubine actually would be a blessing in that case, because, hey, you don't have that responsibility. You're just a concubine. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And some people wouldn't want that responsibility. You've got, even in today's society, you've got people that don't want to be managers of the business that they work at. They just don't want to, right? They wouldn't want the responsibility of having to manage all these other people. And that's fine if that's what makes them happy, right?
Mm-hmm.
So looking at it from that perspective, putting it in that frame, maybe casts a different light on it than what would ordinarily be thought of.
Yeah, that's definitely one aspect of being a concubine, or why not everybody was considered wives and some were considered concubines. But there's multiple ways to become a concubine, or reasons why you would want to become a concubine, or why one would end up becoming a concubine. And we'll talk about that tonight too as well. Judges 19:9. Now this right here is to talk about, like I said, a concubine is also a wife, right? She's also a wife. It says, and when the man rose up to depart, he and his concubine and his servant, his father-in-law, the damsel's father, said unto him, behold, all of this is happening, right? But The damsel, the concubine's father, is called the father-in-law to him.
Mm-hmm.
Father-in-law. You don't get that unless you're your wife. Right? But if that's not clear enough, let's continue reading. And the Levite, the husband of the woman that was slain, okay, answered and said, I came into Gibeah that belongeth to Benjamin, I and my concubine. The woman that was slain was his concubine. And this was a very disturbing chapter, right? If you read all of Judges 19 and what happened with everything. But basically, his concubine cheated on him and left him. He went to go get her back. And when he went to go get her back, she was at her father's house. And after trying to leave a couple different times from the father's house, the father kept insisting they stay the night. They eventually ended up leaving, going to a different area. There was a man there that was telling them like it's bad, it's a bad area to be in, and it was a mob, and it was similar to the story that that happened in Sodom and Gomorrah, where the men were trying to rape the man. In this situation, they were trying to rape him. So the owner of the house, he offered to give his daughter up and the man's wife, the man's concubine, both of them up, right? But the scripture said that they didn't want to hearken unto him. So the concubine was actually thrown out, and the men ended up raping the concubine and killing her. And so the husband took her body, cut her body up into different pieces, and spread it out throughout the 12 tribes of Israel. So that's why I said it's disturbing. But she was a concubine, but she's also listed, or he's also listed as her husband. So
even to go a little further, I don't know if you caught this in the Targum. I think you probably
haven't gotten to that part of the Targum yet.
No, well, whenever Abraham was told to send Hagar out, it actually says in the Targum that he gave.
Oh, go ahead.
It says that Abraham gave Hagar a bill of divorce in her hand when he sent her and Ishmael out.
Yeah, that's Targum.
Yeah. Now and now you wouldn't and it also says that Hagar, or that Sarah, or Sarai at the time, gave Hagar to Abraham to be his wife, right? And being a concubine wasn't simply, oh, hey, I'm just gonna go and lay with you and have sex. It was, hey, this is an agreement we're making.
Contract.
And so whenever it came time that he needed to send her away, he put a bill of divorce in her hand.
Mm-hmm.
And now you wouldn't need to do that if being a concubine was simply a sex slave. It'd be like, oh, well, goodbye, get out of here. No, a concubine was a concubine was not.
You stupid. He said, "Let me call you an Uber. You slow."
Right.
Yeah.
Shabbat shalom.
No, so it wasn't simply, hey, I'm gonna goodbye, get out of here. I'm gonna call you Uber. It was a serious thing. It was, hey, let me give you a bill of divorce because this is the end of the agreement that was formed. You know what I mean? Because being a concubine is, although it may not have the severity and the responsibility that being a wife has, it's still an agreement, and an honorable one, no less.
So we are saying a concubine is for sure a wife, and the evidence outside of, or is there other evidence that you have other than this Judges 20?
Well, a wife was more of an elevated status. So being a concubine was a type of wife that was of a lesser status.
No, but I mean, how are we seeing that his wife?
It talks about Jacob and his wives, right? It talks about Hagar becoming a wife to Abraham, right? So they were wives in a sense, although they were concubines, which is just a different social status than a full wife.
Yeah, that's not as much responsibility.
Not as much responsibility, and also not as many benefits too. Let's be real.
Hence the inheritance rights.
Yeah, the inheritance rights and all of that. Yep.
Well, the first I'll read straight from the Targum because it's in the Targum. Okay. And when I say Targum, it's literally Genesis. The first 5 books of the Bible is just a much older translation. The word Targum means translation. So it says, "Hey, and Abraham rose up in the morning and took bread and a cruse of water and gave to Hagar to bear upon her shoulder and bound it to her loins to signify that she was a servant, and the child, and dismissed her with a letter of divorce." Letter of divorce, bill of divorce. So Abraham did give Hagar a bill of divorce, indicating the end of the covenant. But he did send them away with, gifts and sustenance and all the things. He just didn't throw them out. But the other scripture to talk about where else in the scriptures is concubine considered a wife? In Genesis 16:3. And Sarai, Abram's wife, right, took Hagar, her maid, the Egyptian, after Abraham had dwelt 10 years in the land of Canaan, and gave her to her husband, Abraham, to be his wife. Sarah gave Hagar to Abraham to be his wife. It's another scripture about a concubine being considered a wife in the scripture outside of the one that we presented in the presentation. Okay, so notice that even the text lists the Levite mentioned here as the husband of the concubine. Also, her father is mentioned as his father-in-law. This indicates that a concubine is in fact a wife, although in a lesser role than a first wife, but a wife nonetheless. Google, what is a concubine in the Bible? This is literally a screenshot. In biblical usage, a concubine is a true wife, although of secondary rank. Right? Although of secondary rank. King James Bible Dictionary, concubine, a secondary or inferior wife, still classified as a wife, right? And David took him more concubines and wives out of Jerusalem after he was come from Hebron, and there were yet sons and daughters born to David. And the word for concubine in the scriptures, Palagesh, term for a concubine, a marital companion of social and legal status inferior to that of a wife. Among the Israelite men, commonly acknowledged their concubines, and such women enjoyed the same rights in the house as legitimate wives. Etymology. The etymology of this word is to be an Indo-European loan word related to ancient Greek, meaning a concubine. Remember, it didn't originate in the Hebrew language. But there are many definitions for what a Palagesh relationship is. In the Eastern world, Palagesh fit into the complex family organization, and the woman had more of a distinct legal and social position, whereas in the later Western world, Palagesh was regarded as a long-term sex companionship between a man and a woman who could not or would not be married. So notice it says in the Western world, that's what it's talking about, more of a sexual companionship. Western. But we're not looking at this from a westernized perspective, because the Bible wasn't Western. The Bible was from an Easternized perspective. And so I'm gonna play a video further explaining this, but first let's look at some commentary from the Smith's Bible Dictionary that gives additional insight. So, Smith's Bible Dictionary, concubine. The difference between wife and concubine was less marked among the Hebrews than us, owing to the absence of moral stigma. Right? So the moral stigma is the negative connotation that we talk about in modern day, westernized, right? The difference probably lay in the absence of the right of the bill of divorce, without which the wife could not be repudiated. I don't know. With regard to the children of wife and of concubine, there was no such difference as our illegitimately implies. The latter were a supplementary family to the former. Their names occur in the patriarchal genealogies. We covered this already, right? And their position and provision would depend on the father's will. Genesis 25:6. The state of concubinage is assumed and provided for by the law of Moses. A concubine would generally be either a Hebrew girl bought of her father, a Gentile captive taken in war, a foreign slave bought, or a Canaanitish woman, bond or free. The rights of the first two were protected by the law or Torah, Exodus 21:7 through Exodus 21:10, also 10 through 14. But the third was unrecognized and the fourth prohibited. Free Hebrew women also might become concubines. So it wasn't just these four categories. There's more. Like I said, there's many, many ways someone can become a concubine. To seize on royal concubines for his use was probably the intent of Abner's act, 2 Samuel 3:7. And similarly, the request on behalf of Adonijah was construed. So, and this is talking about this right here, to seize on royal concubines. This is talking about Rizpah, the concubine of King Saul, when after he passed away, after he died, right? Somebody accused either Abner or Abner accused someone else of sleeping with Rizpah, because a lot of times, like when you're trying to overthrow a king, one of the ways that you exert dominance over that situation is by sleeping with his concubines.
Which is what what was his name? I don't know why it's escaping me. David's son, Absalom, which is what Absalom did whenever he was trying to overthrow his father and take over the kingdom. Absalom publicly went into his father's concubine.
Yeah. Oftentimes when you overthrow the king, you don't inherit because you're not giving an inheritance, but a lot of times you take on their wives and their concubines when you overthrow a king. Like, for example, in the book of Jasher, where Moses travels to the land of Cush and he ends up becoming the king of Cush. They try to give him the previous king's wife, and he don't want her. He don't want nothing to do with her because she was a woman of a strange nation, and he knew that he wasn't supposed to deal with that, right? But he inherited her anyway as a wife, but he never touched her, right? And so that's another biblical historical reference to why, how you have the way they do the kings, the wives, the concubines, and everything like that. But I will now play this video from different perspectives about concubines. Now, I will say, I don't think so. One of them is from someone who I do not watch anymore, in all honesty. Old brother Dow, due to many different reasons. But like we keep it real, man. If somebody's right, they're right. If they're wrong, they're wrong. I don't agree with everything that he does in his ministry, but the way he builds communities, right? And some of his understanding regarding keeping the Torah is on point. I'm not going to say I disagree with everything, but on this particular topic of concubine, he's
pretty spot on with that, man.
So don't think that just because we playing these videos that we take on the viewpoint of everybody that we're playing, but they do make some good points. Another part of the video is from Sister Chanel Shalom. Shout out to Chanel Shalom. She gives some real good information on her channel. And
yeah, definitely check it out. It's great stuff.
Yeah, I think it's like you got to be strong. You got to be a strong sister to want to watch her content.
I think it's nation building for women.
Nation building for women. Yeah.
So one of the most often asked questions that I get or I hear asked in other forums or videos or anything is, what is the difference between a wife and a concubine? In a very short answer, the difference is inheritance rights.
So, Pastor Al.
Yes, sir.
The question of the hour is, in this day and age, what defines a woman as a concubine?
What defines a woman as a concubine? Boy, that's a good question. Ah, man, because, people are not ready to handle questions like that in the time that we're living in right now. And of course, people wonder what defines a woman as a concubine. Well, there are many things. First of all, in order to be able to understand concubinage, you have to understand what biblical marriage is. And I didn't say traditional marriage, biblical marriage, because traditional marriage is something totally different than biblical marriage. Traditional marriage is things that Christians do, the things that people out here do in this world. Biblical marriage is something totally different, which we preach and teach and actually live in the ministry in itself. All right. But what defines? What defines? All right. First of all, a concubine is a woman without any inherited rights. All right. That's the hallmark answer. Everybody understands it. Everybody comprehends that. Everybody pretty much gets it, right? That's what they would say. All right. But check this out also. Today, in this society that we live in, and this is hard hitting. This really, truly is hard hitting. But today in this secular society we live in, a lot of women have been married as concubines simply because there was no bride price given to them at the time of marriage, thereby increasing their status as a woman. Or let's say their status to be a wife. That's the reason why I don't mean to be antagonistic. I don't mean to be sitting up here being vindictive or trying to hurt people's feelings or something. I understand how the truth works. I understand how it goes. But the fact of the matter is that when a man got a wife, he ended up paying a bride price for this wife right here. And when you have a concubine does not incur a bride price, because more likely a concubine is either someone who is a servant of the wife, or he was someone that he decided to designate simply because she may have been in indentured servitude, and the master didn't want to designate her as a wife at that time. Now, a concubine can receive the designation of a wife, and because that time is all dependent upon the master in itself, because this is still a master-servant relationship, kind of like what we are today with the Most High. So that right there in itself would actually constitute pretty much what a concubine in this day and age and hour is. Now watch this. Now, if you think about this.
Shalom, ladies. Welcome to Nation Building for Women. I'm Chanel Shalom, and today we're going to talk about concubinage. And the reason why I want to cover this topic is because at this point, concubinage is necessary. It actually always has been necessary. That's why it existed in the first place. There are a lot of misconceptions about what a concubine is and what a concubine does, and is it a good or bad thing for a woman to be considered as a concubine. So in this series, we're going to kind of cover all of that and try to simplify it so everyone can pretty much understand. In ancient times, I won't even say ancient times, but just in other societies outside of our society, outside of America, there has pretty much been different categories of women. And there were the women that you would make a wife, and then there were women who would be considered as whores or harlots. But then there was a middle ground, which was concubines. That middle ground is kind of missing in our society, because nowadays, if you're not going to be wife material, you tend to be put in the category of a hoe. But there still should be a middle ground, because just because a woman isn't a wife doesn't mean she's a hoe either. There are a lot of women who are not wife material, but they are still striving to be a wife because they want the title, because they want the honor that comes with being a wife. But concubines are also honorable, and you're going to learn that in this video and in the coming videos as well, that being a concubine is not something shameful. It was never shameful before, and we have to take the shame away from that now. When you read the Bible, you will see that there are many men in there who had either multiple wives or wives and concubines. And many of the men that had concubines had children with their concubines as well. And their children was recognized in their genealogy, just like the children that they had with their wives. So concubines' children in ancient Hebrew was, or in ancient Israel was considered as legitimate children. But we have women today who are having children out of wedlock, and their children are considered to be illegitimate. Their children are considered to be bastards. But if you ask these women, you know, why don't you consider being someone's concubine, they'll laugh it off or look down on it, when in reality, a concubine actually has legitimate children, you know, because her union with her man is actually like a marriage. You might notice in the Bible that a concubine's her man, her head, her covering is still called her husband. So it's not her boyfriend, it's not, you know, some other random guy. It's her husband, because she is committed to him. A woman who is in a committed relationship and has children is always going to be in a better position than a woman who is not in a committed relationship and has children, and her children ends up being, you know, called bastards, and she's called a baby mom, and, you know, they have these terms attached to them that are shameful. But a concubine is not a shameful thing to be, and the children that she has are not shameful either. But other than that, concubines do not just serve sexual purposes. They do have some wifely qualities, and they do participate in some wifely duties, and they should be willing to help the wife with, you know, the home and stuff like that, because there could come a time where the wife may need a hand, or maybe the wife may get sick, or, you know, isn't able to do certain things around the house or whatever. And so the concubine should be available to do those things or to help out with those things. But there are people who feel as though a concubine should only serve sexual purposes. But I think that pretty much that mentality comes from us just practicing monogamy a lot in our culture, and pretty much associating any woman other than the wife to just be a mistress, or, you know, just someone who's just there to show a man a good time. We kind of associate that with any woman who's not a wife. But the thing about concubines, at least back in the day, concubines did do more than just have sex. They did contribute to the household. They did, you know, help out with the same types of things that the wife does. Also, there is a chance that even though you may be a concubine at first, there is a chance that your husband may want to make you a wife. And the only way to put yourself in a position to be, I guess, upgraded to that position is to actually show him that you have the ability to do wifely things. So if you are being a concubine and you're only having sex, it's going to be hard for a man to view you as a wife if you're not doing anything wifely. So you have to actually start doing some things that will show him that you're actually capable of handling the position of being a wife. It would help your husband and his wife to respect you more if you are doing more than just having sex. So you have to really think about your honor, as a woman or as a concubine. You have to think about, what do I need to do to solidify my honor? Because you may not be a wife, but you still want to be respected and viewed in a good light, and you want to be a good example for other women, other women who may not understand what concubinage is about, or they may be curious about it. You would want to be a good example of what a concubine is, or what a concubine should be. So, and please check the description box for the link to my book, The Concubine Handbook.
So
yeah, good stuff. Good stuff.
A lot of good information. Now to go back to the presentation. In conclusion, neither the title of mistress or concubine is inherently negative. It is important to be informed of the original meaning and terminology of the words we freely use today. By being aware of their true meaning, my hope is that one may later alter their negative biases and preconceived notions regarding the modern interpretation of them. The closer we get to a biblical viewpoint of the world, the closer we get to the Most High. Shalom.
Mm-hmm.
Questions? Anybody got questions?
I wanted to ask, I guess, so to speak, sounded like the reason why they would have it, well, like back in Abraham's day, starting off with him, and then Jacob, like the reason why they would have concubines or many wives is because of the sake of having children. Having children was very important then, I guess more important then than it is to us nowadays, or in this Western world we're in.
Well, see that, and then there goes back to, is it still important? Because that was actually one of the first commandments ever given, was to be fruitful and multiply, right? So, and that can be much more easily accomplished if man has more than one woman, right? I mean, if you look at wildlife, for example, you look at whether it's elk or lions or wolves or elephant seals, the males fight for dominance so that they can have breeding rights to a ton of different females, right? In fact, a group of a group of crows is called a murder, and a group of lions is called a pride. A group of elephant seals is called a harem, because one bull male has the breeding rights to all the females in the whole group, right? And what that does is that allows the population to grow exponentially, no less. Because if you just had two elephant seals, and let's say even if they produce, I don't even know how many they produce, but let's say they even just produce two every time they get pregnant, then it's going to grow very slowly. But if you've got 5 females and each of them is producing 2, then it's going to grow like a whole lot more, a lot faster. You know what I'm saying? And then that overcomes the the ones that die off from sickness and so forth. But going back to being fruitful and multiplying, yeah, I mean that's part of the reason. And if you look at statistically, it's like 1.7. Let's see, I think it's for every male that's born, there's 1.7 females born in humans, in people, right? So you've got a much larger portion of the population of mankind is female. And I had watched a TED Talk a while back, a long time ago, where I believe it was a Muslim lady, but I mean the statistics are still accurate regardless. Was she said that if every man and woman got together in a monogamous relationship, there would be millions of women left out that could never have a relationship with a man. So statistically, when looking at that and looking at the idea that we are supposed to be fruitful and multiply, it does just make a whole lot of sense.
Not in the sense of it only being necessary or only being
yeah. It's not
back
like
in Abraham's day.
Yeah, I mean it's not like it's required or anything like that, you know.
But you came out the gate with the animal reference. I said, do this brother not realize we on the platform with all females? See, you just came out the gate with an animal reference.
Well, I mean, I'm just comparing to nature, you know.
I get the nature comparison, but boy, you about to get your head bit off, boy. You say, yeah, you know it now. Animals. No, but
also, if we were just to look at human beings in general, men are hardwired. Most men, anyways, are hardwired in their brains to desire more than one woman. Right? I mean, that's just the way men are wired. Women are not wired that way, in general. So, another biological thing there. You know. The animal reference.
Fact check.
What's up?
But I'm gonna go ahead and go with this next question. So are we saying that a concubine is a wife?
Yes.
Yes.
So okay, when it in Genesis it said a concubine maybe had, and it was like 4 different ways. One of them being, what did it say? Acquired by like a foreign.
You can I'm gonna name all the ones that I can think of off the top of my head. All the reasons, all the ways you can be a concubine. First way is just voluntary. You want to be a concubine, either you're a woman and you want to be a concubine, or you're a woman and you want to have a covering in the head, right? And so you want to be able to be covered and protected, so you become a concubine, both voluntary. You could be a concubine if your father sold you. So if your father sold you to the master and he became your husband, that's another way you could be a concubine. If you were a part of a country that was conquered by Israel and you were a slave and someone saw you, looked upon you, thought you were, attractive, and they wanted to take you as concubine or as a wife, they could do that. You could become a concubine that way. Then there was, what else? There was, you could already be a servant in the master's house, and he can take you on as a concubine. You could be given to the master by the head of the mistress of the house, like in Hagar's situation with Sarah. There's many different ways, but yes, once you get the designation, you're considered a wife.
Talk about that third one. So it's not sitting right with me because there's many instances in the Bible. You got Ezra, Nehemiah, you have Solomon, where it is frowned upon to have a foreign wife. So how then are we saying the Most High instituted this idea of concubine, and not only that, but she can be a foreign slave?
Okay. So with that, if you had a wife and she was given the status of a full wife, right, then she would have authority over the children. And if she was a foreigner in so much as she was worshiping false gods and so forth, then she would teach the children to worship false gods as well. Now, if she was a concubine, she wouldn't have that authority over the children, and the children would be under the wife, not under her. So she wouldn't be able to influence them into worshiping false gods. That would be one aspect of that.
Yeah, but even a more significant thought process about it is when the scriptures talks about not marrying strange women or women of another nation, it's talking about it from the perspective, like he mentioned, of strange or foreign women who are worshiping other gods, false gods. Those individuals, whether they were women or men, couldn't marry into Israel. But if they were to come into Israel, sojourn in Israel, and accept the Most High, keep the law, statutes, and commandments, then they were considered Israel.
And their
At
males
that
get
point,
circumcised.
correct, men getting circumcised, then they would be considered Israel and were allowed to marry, whether from the biblical marriage perspective of a wife or the biblical marriage perspective of a concubine, with no penalty, because although they come from a strange nation or a strange land where they used to worship false gods, they are no longer considered strange or foreign. They're considered Israel.
And then that also goes back to the same thing I was just saying, was that even if they had converted, right, they had converted their beliefs and so forth, they wouldn't have had the upbringing to be able to properly teach that to the offspring. So then you would generally want them to be a concubine rather than a wife that had authority over the offspring.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. So what you said, Jamal, does not quite apply, because when this foreign woman, because her country lost the war, she became a concubine to the Israel king.
Yeah,
I mean, they were pagans. That's just what it was going to be.
Deuteronomy 30, I think, right? 30?
You got to pull it up. I don't know it off the top of my head, but
30, I believe.
There's specific there's specific guidance in the Torah of that process. There's a process that is done where if a man, scripture says, if a man looks upon a woman and he finds her fair or something like that, he says that he can take her as a wife. And there's a process where he has to.
Deuteronomy 21, sorry.
Deuteronomy 21, you want to read that?
Yeah, okay. We'll start in verse 10. It says, when thou goest forth to war against thine enemies, and the Most High, thy Elohim, hath delivered them into thine hand, and thou hast taken them captive, and seest among the captives beautiful women, and hast a desire unto her, that thou wouldest have her to be thy wife, then thou shalt bring her home to thine house, and shall shave her head, and pare her nails, and she shall put the raiments of captivity from off of her, and shall remain in thine house, and bewail her father and her mother a full month. And after that thou shalt go in unto her, and be her husband, and she shall be thy wife. That's verse 10 through 13, Deuteronomy 21.
Yeah. So by her being captive, brought into Israel, and brought into your household as the man, that's sojourning. One, a man isn't going to keep somebody around that isn't going to be adhering to Torah anyway. So even in that instance, it would still apply, because she's now keeping the law, statutes, and commandments in this household as a wife, regardless of whatever her nationality lineage may be.
Okay. So God approved for people to have multiple wives and have concubines for the sole purpose of being fruitful? Like that was okay to him?
It wasn't the sole purpose, but
I wouldn't say that was the sole purpose.
It wasn't the
well, not the sole purpose, but like one of the main.
I mean, that's one thing that does come from that. I mean,
yeah, that's part of it. Listen, and this might sound misogynistic. I know this your first time on tonight. I told Keita you brought on the wrong night.
Yeah, because I always thought polygamy was wrong.
You know, so many people do, and that's because of the society that we're brought up in, where virtually anything the Bible says, society teaches the opposite. Right?
The link, but in a nutshell, polygamy. There's polygamy, which is a man or a woman can both have multiple sexual partners. It's not even about marriage. It's literally just sexual partners. It's coming from a sexual connotation, not a marriage connotation. Now, if both the man and a woman have sexual partners and they happen to get married, it's still polygamy. Polygyny is biblical marriage. Polygyny is what you find in the scriptures, where a man can have multiple wives, but it's done in decency and order. There's laws and statutes that govern it. For example, if a man has his first wife and he takes on a second wife, if he likes the second wife more than the first wife and has kids with the second wife, he cannot give inheritance to the children with the second wife before the children with his first wife, because the children with his first wife is the heirs. They're the firstborn, they're the heirs. He can't show favoritism in that regard.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
there's specific laws that outlines it, and it's a common misconception. Just like, I mean, it's a good thing that we covered this topic tonight, because just how mistress is bad in American culture, right? We think mistress is bad. We think concubines are bad. We just looked and saw in the scriptures it's not really a bad thing. Same thing with polygyny, or another form of biblical marriage. Now, you don't have to do it. It's not mandatory, but it's an option. You can be monogamous or you can be polygynous. They're both righteous and holy biblical forms of biblical marriage, but it's up to the individual. If he wants to take on a second wife, he can, as long as he's doing it righteously. I know when you hear about multiple wives, the first thing we think about is, oh, he just wants sex, or he's just trying to be a pimp, or, you know, whatever the case may be. And from a woman's perspective, we've been so ingrained with monogamy. But I'll tell you, monogamy in today's sense is not monogamy. It's serial whoredom. Because in the Bible, a woman is supposed to be covered by a man her entire life. She's born in her father's house, so he covers her. And then she grows up, and when she's of maritable age, she's now given to her husband, who becomes her head and covering until they die. And if he dies before her and she becomes a widow, then she goes back to her father's house if he's still alive. And if not, she goes underneath the covering and headship of the church or the priesthood. So she's always to be covered. A woman is always to be covered and taken care of. However, if, like, the way we look at it in today's time, we say, well, if a man has multiple wives, he's committing adultery. That's not the case, because we see it in the scripture. There's plenty of examples where you see it happening. And then one thing that specifically comes to mind is with King David. King David had multiple wives. He had wives and concubines. We read it earlier in the presentation, right?
So
which one was it where the Most High said, if you would have asked for more, I would have gave you more?
Oh, that's David.
That was David. Yeah, David. Okay, yeah. So in the case of David, David had multiple wives and concubines, and when he slept with Bathsheba and he killed Uriah the Hittite, and the prophet came and told him that he was wrong. The Most High didn't like that. David had to repent, but the Most High told David, if you would have wanted more, I would have given you more. And he was talking about wives or concubines in terms of expanding his house. So some people take on the perspective of, well, it's not frowned upon in the scriptures, but it's not a good thing. It's like the Most High just allows it. But in that situation, he told him he would have given him more. So if the Most High is willing to give you more wives or more concubines, then how can one go back and say that was something that he doesn't like, or something that he doesn't condone, because it was actually there? It's do we read the scripture from our personal perspective or biases, or do we read the scripture for what it is, and then we have to alter and adjust our personal perspectives to become biblical, rather than trying to make the Bible become what's in our head? You know what I mean?
And now that's not to say that, some people can misuse the scriptures and they be doing it for the wrong reasons. Some dudes do want to be pimps, and they want to feel, they want to be getting a bunch of sex, right? I mean, it's not that that can't happen or it doesn't happen, but it needs to be done in decency with love and respect. And, you know, it has to be something that is put on your heart to do, you know. It's not simply about gratifying the flesh. And if it is, then you're doing it for the wrong reason.
Yeah, exactly. There's definitely brothers out there that's doing it wickedly. You know what I mean?
And if, like I said, if someone's doing it simply to gratify the flesh, just to get some more, you know, then they're doing it for the wrong reason, and it's not good. You know what I'm saying?
Because here's the thing, the scripture says that a husband is supposed to do what for the wife? He's supposed to provide her clothing, food, shelter, and conjugal rights. Right? Conjugal rights is, you know, procreation and recreational procreation. So that would apply to anyone else that he takes on under him. So if he has 2 wives and a concubine, or 3 wives and 2 concubines, however the number, he has to provide all of that for everyone. That's outlined in the law. So he has to follow that. If you are a man and you can't pay your own bills and you barely can make ends meet, why are you out here trying to be polygynous?
Yep.
You know, there's some brothers who literally purchase separate homes for each of his wives, and they don't all dwell together. You got money to buy multiple houses. I'm not saying you have to, but I'm saying if that's an option.
And you know, that all goes back to the dynamic of the relationships, and if the wives get along with each other and so forth. So I mean, I've seen brothers that have 5 wives and they all get along together and they all live in one house and they live in a mansion and they're living like kings. And then there's other brothers that they don't necessarily want to be around each other all the time, so he has a separate house for each of his wives, you know. And it's not that either one is necessarily right or better than the other. It's just, you know, individual circumstances.
But I'll send you the link, because we go into that really deep on a different show we did. I want to say that was probably like 7-8 months ago now.
Oh, dude, it was a while back. It was a while back.
We've been doing this for over a year now already. I think this episode like 67 or 68.
I want to say that was like episode 4 or 5 or something like that.
Yeah, and then I also did a video outside of Shabbat Talk on it. I want to say it was like 3 years ago, 2-3 years ago.
And here's the thing: it can definitely be done unrighteously, and it's not for everyone, you know, because it's a tremendous responsibility.
Yeah.
It's not simply, oh, look, I'm getting more sex. No, it's a tremendous responsibility that the man has to shoulder. You know what I'm saying? And if he's not fulfilling his obligations to provide, then he's not doing it righteously. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Because if you know your fruit, the fruit that you produce, it comes from within, the seed that's been planted. And if you are going into a polygynous marriage unrighteously, then the fruit that you're going to produce is going to be bad fruit. So you're going to be able to see like who is actually doing it for the right reasons and who isn't, because the way they carry themselves, the way that they act, the way that they treat their wives, the way that they operate, you know, the way that they talk, the way that their wives talk about them, right? Because you might see somebody who's like, oh, my husband, he okay. You like, dang, really? But then you might see somebody that speaks very highly of their husband, right? Speaking very highly of their husband. So
yeah, it's you know, some people are constantly edifying, right? And yeah, you know, I mean, it goes so many different ways with so many different things, because we have a pre-programmed set of ideals that were force fed to us and spoon fed to us. And when you've got that operating in the background of your mind, even when you come to a knowledge of the truth, you still have to overcome that. And some people can't, and that's it is what it is. If somebody can't too, you know what I'm saying? I'm not saying it should be forced on anyone or anything like that, because
it's totally a choice.
Yeah, it definitely should not be forced on someone.
Totally a choice. Like me, I observe Torah. I don't observe parts of the Torah. I observe everything. Everything in the Bible is true. Everything in the Bible is right. And I live my life trying to, do what it says, right? So I accept that polygyny is a righteous form of biblical marriage. Do I have multiple wives? No, I have one wife, right? I have one wife. I'm happy with one wife. I understand the responsibility of taking on another wife. Is that something that fits me in my lifestyle right now? Absolutely not. If I was to try to do that, then I would be doing it for the wrong reasons. And I know that, so I don't want to do it. Does that make sense? Even if it is technically okay, it would be within my right, it would be all right, and the way I would go about it would be correct. If my heart ain't right with it, then I can't do it. So I have to get my heart right if it's something that I want to do in the future, if that makes sense. So until that happens, but there's brothers that's out there that they just want what they want. Deep down, they might talk about all of that Bible and scripture, but deep down, they just want to be able to have two women that they can put their arms around like that, or go out in public and have two ladies. And those types of individuals always get exposed. They absolutely.
There's a big difference between trying to justify something through scriptures as opposed to using the scriptures to live your life, right? If someone is ever attempting to justify themselves with scripture, then they need to look at their motive first off, because if your motive isn't, if your motivation is in the right place, then you shouldn't have to justify it. You shouldn't feel the need to justify it. So, yeah.
Thanks. All right. Anything else? Anybody? Questions, thoughts, something you'd like to share? Maybe you got something out of the information given tonight?
I'll give the, if no one else has anything else, I will give the Torah portion for next week.
There you go. There it is right there. So for those watching at the house, you like the platform and the information that we share, you want to support the platform, first you can hit that Cash App at the bottom. Then you can also like, share, comment, and subscribe. The Cash App is Cash App USC Coalition 144. So Unity and Survival Coalition 144. And make sure you like, share, comment, and subscribe to the channel.
Yeah, comment if you have any views that or anything, really anything. I mean, if you liked what we said, or you dislike what we said, or you disagree, or you want further clarity on something, feel free to type a comment.
If there be nothing else, family, may the Most High keep you, bless you, camp His angels around you, and give each and every one of you guys shalom. In Messiah's name, Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom, family. Love y'all.
Shabbat shalom. Love you all.
Shabbat shalom. Thank you.
Shabbat shalom, family. Love you all.
Trying to get my head right, I suffer for this pain. Just trying to get my bread right. Hope you do the same. In these streets through the pain and rainy days. Just trying to get my bread right. Hope you do the same.
So many people in the dark, I'm trying to be a light. So many people moving left, I'm trying to do what's right. So many people falling down, I'm trying to reach a height and lift them up. And if they giving up, I'm trying to bring the fight. Cause if you die in your sin, that's permanent. I'm trying to come up off the